The Scoreboard Show, or shall we call it the Smithsburg Auto Scoreboard Show because they paid for it, is brought to you also by Henshaw Trail Sales of Richland, Iowa, the Packwood Locker, and the Cedar Rapids Titans. We got Coach Cody Van Fleet. Cody, what a night. I had a late one. Our game didn't start till late, but there's a lot of amazing players in it. But we'll get around to talking about that. Where do you want to start at?
Well, I guess we can start with the top team in the area, and that's number 3, 1A, number 3 ranked Notre Dame Nikes. That's the game I was in person for tonight. Got a chance to watch them take on Central Lee. Central Lee battling for their life to try to stay with Meepo in that, battle for second. And Notre Dame coming off a huge win on Saturday against the number 6 ranked Marquette Catholic, which is up near like the Dubuque area, way north of 80. They played on a neutral site and got a huge win against the number 6 ranked team. So Central Lee came in, really battled. Notre Dame just way too strong. Final score of that one, 64-48. Shea Stevens only had 20 tonight, but it was a great game all around. Griffin Keys made some big shots. Payne Pratzman, Eli Olson, Kellen Porter coming off the bench, Tatum Warner coming off the bench. Just way too much for the Hawks down at Central Lee. Just looking through my notes here, Will Hayes ended up with 16. Morrison had a good game. Both the Swan twins, always very hard to stop from shooting. Both had solid nights. But at the end of the day, just way too much speed of Notre Dame. And like we always talk about, they go on these runs where in a minute and a half or 2 minutes, they'll score 10 points quickly. And all of a sudden, you got to call a timeout and be like, gosh, we were just down 4. Now we're down 14. What the heck just happened? So good win for them. That kind of keeps them in, obviously keeps Notre Dame with a nice little cushion just to stay in town. The next big game right across town was Mediapolis at West Burlington. Mediapolis had, beat Central Lee already. They had a 1-game lead on Central Lee. They come into West Burlington where, Figueroa had that leg injury last Friday, didn't play. I didn't know if he was playing tonight. Didn't sound like he was going to. Comes in like the Knicks, the guy in the Knicks that came out of the tunnel 30 years ago. Everybody's going nuts. He's got the limp going. Meepo comes out on fire. They were up well at the half, was up 15 points late in the third. And Coach Marlowe and the Falcons had a great game plan, just came storming back. Got the 15-point deficit into a couple-point lead. Final score of that one, West Burlington 44, Mediapolis 41. Huge win for West Burlington and a huge win for the Southeast Super Conference race for second. So even though Central Lee lost tonight, they didn't lose any ground to Meepo. So that is a huge, huge win. Pryor Bowen leading scorer for the Falcons with 14. Luke Nager leading scorer for Meepo with 10. And just Meepo only 2 points in the fourth quarter. So haven't watched the film yet. Not exactly sure what happened. Pryor Bowen hit 2 free throws very late to give them a 3-point lead. Meepo's 3 at the buzzer to tie it off the rim. So huge win for West Burlington. And that had implications for West Burlington, Meepo, and New London for that race for second. So those are the 2 big games that I saw early on. So what'd you have?
Well, I had Highland in Columbus, and Columbus has got these 3 great players. Gibson Scott is a younger one that I saw a little bit in the JV game I saw him last year, and I thought he was going to be good. But, man, he was having a breakout game tonight, man. He flying all around, getting putbacks. He's a great player. But they're led by a kid named Rowan Miller. I'm talking about Hillcrest Academy. It's Hillcrest Academy in Columbus. As far as the North goes, man, these guys are the top. That Rowan Miller is maybe one of the smartest players I just ever seen. He just seems to know what to do and how to pass the ball and how to set everything up. And then they got the Bailey kid. This Bailey is ridiculous. They have somewhere 35-point win, 70, 35, up in the 70s. It was interesting though because the fourth quarter they put in what you call garbage time. Where the JV's basically playing. And it didn't look like garbage time to me. I mean, both, and they got a Hughes kid at Hillcrest. That's he kind of leads their junior varsity squad. He come in and he was just looking like a beast. But Columbus was also knocking down threes and passing the ball around and getting some things done. Ellis Hills Carrier probably leads the way. I'm sure he's got a double digits in rebounds, probably around 10 or 12 points or something like that. The kid for Columbus that really had the game, the best game I've ever seen him play, is Drew Totemeyer. I mean, again, maybe all their points in the first quarter. He got hot. He's hitting threes. He was picking up balls and putting things back. He had a pretty good game. But I'm telling you, I think they're like 10-0 on Round Guide Radio. And I remember Keokuk come in there last year, 21-2 or something like that, coming into this game. And that's exactly what Hillcrest did to them. They had a guy with averaging like 31 points a game and 14 points. There's like 9 points and maybe 6 boards or something in that game. Hillcrest is tough at home, I'll tell you that. And they got the two religions up there, Mennonite and basketball. They just play great, and they play so good together. And they hit. I'm not 100. I mean, they may have missed a free throw, but I don't think I seen it. Everybody all the coaches I talk to that play them may say that of all the teams they play, Hillcrest makes you pay the most for your mistakes. And I don't think Coach Krabaka, she should just shake this one off. They beat Pekin like that, not quite like that, but I mean, they have pretty solid wins over Winfield, Mount Union, Pekin, Waco. That's the big schools in the north, and they beat all of them.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know something. They went over to Kyoto and got tripped up Saturday. That's their first loss. But I don't know exactly 11-1, 10-1, somewhere in that range. It was kind of, it's always fun to watch elite athletes. And there was certainly some of those on the floor. It wasn't the most competitive game I've been at this year. And, Columbus just got that big win over Lone Tree, and they're playing real good. They got the 6 wins. And they're wanting to get that 7th win because last year they got 6 wins. That's the most in 20 years that they've had. And they're really dying to get, that 7th win. We're going to give them another chance on Round Guy Radio on Friday as they'll be at home taking on Highland. And, there's Coach, let's talk a little bit about the upper division and the middle. There's just something about there's something about West Burlington and Holy Trinity and Meepo and Notre Dame. And Central Lee, I guess those, but it's not there's more of a middle. They're Pekin on the north side. It's, it's Pekin, Waco, Winfield, Mount Union, and Hillcrest. And it's that way this year. It was that way 5 years ago. It was that way 3 years ago. Those are the ones. But then there's this other battle, to be the best of the middle. I think Columbus is definitely on there. Lone Tree got a nice little win. Not last night, but the night before against English Valley. And that kind of, Coach, when the team's kind of struggling, like Van Buren has been kind of scuffling along there, but they just have this magic game where they win 66-65 over Fairfield. Fairfield doesn't really play bad in that game, but, you and I got to see, Van Buren when they were hitting threes and things were looking good. And I thought they looked pretty good in that game. We've seen some other games where they, like a Holy Trinity, they sure couldn't compete there. But I got this matchup with Lone Tree and Van Buren, and Van Buren looked really sharp in that game. They just passed the ball well, shot the ball well, made good decisions, and that's what they do here in Fairfield. And they just hit a bunch of free throws, And if they missed one more free throw, that game was tied up and goes into overtime. Zillman did have a bunch of ducks, maybe 3, 4, 5, or 6, and some friggin' goaltending. He continues his aerial show. Bisgard got a 31 for Fairfield in that game, in that loss. But, they were not able to carry that over tonight, as the same thing happens for New London. You and I have been talking about New London has been scrapping along there, and we kept thinking sooner or later they're going to get a win, and we didn't think it would be very long, and it wasn't very long.
Yeah.
It was Saturday, and they get a win over
Yeah.
Waco nonetheless, and they get the win tonight. The Porter kid, Coach Porter's son,
Yep.
he's not coaching this year, but what a great coach he was. And his son Blaze was terrific too, man. But tell us a little bit of what's going on, or what a little bit about New London and how they're turning this thing around as they get back-to-back wins.
Well, and I'll tell you what the key to it has been. Brigham Porter turned 18 on Saturday. So since Brigham Porter turned 18, New London hasn't lost the game. So
They're undefeated.
he turned 18 on Saturday. They get a huge win, big win. Then tonight, Van Buren, who's coming off of their big win last night against Fairfield, comes into town. New London gets the win tonight against Van Buren. Final score of that one, 65-50. Van Buren had beat them earlier in the year, so they definitely wanted to get this one tonight and kind of get a little payback. Porter ends up with 20 points tonight. Leffler with 23.
Landry Leffler?
London, yes.
Yeah. He had a good game against Fairfield.
23. Yep. So he's playing well. Coachell is a coach. Coachler. For Van Buren, he
Shellman
Shellman's the coach.
Oh yeah. Cockrell. That's hard to say. Everyone calls. I've done that before too, but I guess the way you say it is Cockrell or Coral. I mean,
from what I saw, it looked like he got injured in the first half. No idea. Serious, not serious. I don't know, but that definitely kind of changed. Obviously what Van Buren was doing, because he is. He's a really good player and a really good scorer for them. He can beat you inside, outside. He's very talented. But Brigham Porter tonight, 20 points. Leffler with 23. And so huge win. New London now won 2 straight and got a nice win. And we talked about it. Their guards are getting better every week. They started out the season slow, but if you want to peak, you want to start peaking in late January. That's the time. So congrats to them. Great win for the Tigers at home, as they've struggled last couple of years. And so since like you said, since Blaze's team that went to state, they've been rebuilding. And so kudos to them. Kudos to Brigham for, sticking it out, to writing it out with his teammates, and, little brothers at Notre Dame now doing a fantastic job. One of the best freshmen up there with Rhaegar in Southeast Iowa. So speaking of Rhaegar, Holy Trinity hosted Danville tonight. And once again, all the home teams of all these games, at least in the South, won tonight. So Holy Trinity put just a whooping on Danville. Final score 74-30. So huge win for Holy Trinity and Coach Hellige. Lane Rung went.
Yeah, I heard he went off.
33 points. Rhaegar with 15. Corbin Van Noel with 10. So that's going to set up a heck of a game on Friday as Holy Trinity goes to West Burlington. And that's now, a big game as you're talking about the middle. 2 big games between 2 teams that are in the middle trying to work their way to the top third.
Yeah, they both those schools got a little bit of a shot at second place now, don't they? With the Meepo loss.
Yes. Yep, with the Meepo.
And Centrally lost.
Yep. And so talking to Coach Swan and Coach Swanson after the Central Lee Notre Dame game tonight, they came out and I was already had the score, and obviously they were up, they lost. They're not loving life. And I said, hey guys, you're still in the fight. West Burlington just took down Meepo. So you got life. And so yes, you may have lost the battle tonight, but there's a chance you can still win the war. So I mean, yeah, with Meepo's loss, it extends Notre Dame's lead on everybody, but it also gives Holy Trinity, West Burlington, and centrally, still an opportunity to stay in there with Meepo. But these teams are going to have to beat each other, and so as these games keep coming, that's going to happen. So those are the 4 games I had in the South. I did get a score, Dave, as we were talking here between Waco and Pekin. I know that was the game you were wanting to get.
Yeah, that's the big one.
Pekin ends up winning at home tonight against Waco. Final score 35-44. So
Wow, that's a tight one.
Not a high scoring game, but Pekin ends up taking down Waco.
Well, that
I didn't see the I don't think it had the scores per quarter. It doesn't. But yeah, final score, Warriors lose to the Panthers. Pekin gets the win 44-35.
That's outstanding. That does exactly the same thing that Meepo or West Burlington beating Meepo. That puts a bunch of life back into Pekin. Well, Coach Hellige down there at Holy Trinity picks up his 100th win Monday night against a real tough Clay Edwards run Winfield Mount Union there. And that was a low score, too. Nobody's scoring a lot of points against Winfield Mount Union, and 51 was all it took to get the 100th win for Coach Hellige, and we're certainly taking our hat off for that, and he gets the 101 win. The other news I wanted to mention, last night against Fairfield, Van Buren lost senior Lakin Bainbridge to an injury for the whole season. So, my God, if he's going to lose Coral, too, because Will Coral's a great player, and he's the middle, They haven't had a big player for a while, and he grew a little bit, and he's the biggest guy they got, and he certainly played big against Fairfield, but hopefully Coach Shellman his roster was 21, went from 21 down to 13. He might be down to 12 after tonight. I hope, I know their JV game only had 6 kids in the thing, so wishing them.
Well, another big one down south here, Dave, was Fort Madison at Keokuk. And, Keokuk, Jackson Clark really been playing well lately, really been dominating force down low. And they had a monster second half. Final score of that one, Fort Madison 38, Keokuk 80. So
Wow.
the Chiefs get the win by 42 tonight.
I see they're ranked 15th. They just entered the rankings.
Yeah. And so, they've been playing pretty well against everybody in the conference. A couple there, they lost to Pella, I think it was up north. I mean, they've lost a couple non-conference games. The big game, if you want to see 2 here in a week or 2, I'm not exactly sure when it is, but you can check your schedules at home or on Bound. Here in a couple weeks, Keokuk, I believe, will play West Hancock, Illinois, which is right across the river. So you have Cooper Knowles, who's 6'9", getting a whole bunch of D1 offers and looks, versus Jackson Clark, who's 6'10", also getting a whole bunch of D1 looks. Cooper Knowles, I ran into him on Sunday. He was on an unofficial visit to the University of Iowa. He'd already been on one at Illinois, so we kind of got to see both teams play each other head to head. And so got a chance to talk to him and his mom and dad. And, that's going to be a heck of a game. If you're just a basketball junkie in the area, West Hancock, Keokuk is going to be a game. West Hancock's already played in Fort Madison. I got a chance to see him over at Western Illinois in a holiday tournament over break, but that will be a great game. And that'll be a great test for Keokuk and Jackson Clark to go up against another 6'9" center that has some D1 interest. So, but tonight it's all Chiefs. Yeah. 80-38. Don't have the lines for what those guys had yet, but Keokuk, similar to Notre Dame down here in the South, are starting to run away a little bit with their offense.
Well, Jackson Clark, last I checked, was leading the state in scoring and in rebounding.
Yeah, and I think Shea Stevens is also up there now in scoring. So yeah, we've got two of the top scorers in the state here in southeast Iowa. So that makes it. And Jackson Clark will be on Saturday
We're
at
like
West
15 miles
Burlington.
apart.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So this Saturday, Keokuk is at West Burlington. So anybody here in southeast Iowa that follows,
Wow. We had them. You and me had them.
Yep. So they will be. If you're in the Burlington, West Burlington area, Saturday afternoon and don't have anything to do, you could come over to West Burlington and see a 6'10" guy that is, like you said, averages about 30 and 15.
Well, I think I got a score here on the Winfield Mount Union Lone Tree game. Winfield Mount Union gets the win, but they continue to Lone Tree continues to play well, and particularly so. Winfield Mount Union 44, Lone Tree 36. And Dynamite Dom Garcia had a 20-point game tonight down there, and that's really all I know. But I don't think Lone Tree can hold their head too low after that.
Yeah. And again, Winfield, just such a great defensive team, have been so tough in that league for the last, 15 years. I mean, Clay just does such an awesome, and he's produced some great ball players over the last 10 years. So yeah, that's always a tough one. The other one, I think the only one we did you mention the L&M Wapello?
I don't know. I don't know the score of that one. That's a big game, though.
Yeah, so Wapello takes down L&M, final score 58-47. So Wapello moves to 3-9, and they outscore L&M 17. Well, they outscore them 18-10 in the third and 17-11 in the fourth. So L&M had the lead at the half. Wapello came screaming back in the second half. So Wapello moves to 3-9 and L&M to 2-11. But yeah, at the end of the day, the Indians get the win over the Falcons.
We've seen teams, Lone Tree struggling, Van Buren struggling, New London struggling, but they are putting some wins together and some pretty quality games together. It seems like here at midseason, you can't overlook anybody. There's some of these teams without great records are biting the hand that feeds them there a little bit along the way.
Yeah. And the other thing you got to realize right now, Dave, is injuries can play a factor in games. Guy goes out for Van Buren, and all of a sudden, New London gets the win. The other thing is illness. I mean,
oh my God,
just about everybody and their dog, it seems like, had a cold or the flu bug here in southeast Iowa in the last 2 weeks. So you and me included.
Yeah.
So I mean, so it's one of those things where, my daughter's team tonight for Notre Dame, she had one. We had two starters not here tonight. One was homesick with the flu. The other one rolled her ankle. And so what you might have had the first time you played a team, you come in the second time and you might be down two starters, or you might have two starters that are playing, but they're battling a cold, or they got sore throats, or, stuff like that. So all of those things factor in now to, some of these games. And not everybody in January and February is ever playing. Very few teams are playing at 100%. There's always somebody that's got something going on, whether it's just a nagging injury or a shin splint or a rolled ankle or cold or the flu. There's just a lot going on. So every night, anybody can get beat. And, it's just, it changes things. And that's some of the stuff where, when I talk to these coaches after the games, you hear, well, yeah, so-and-so had a cold, or, so-and-so's getting an x-ray on his, something, because something might be injured. And so you just never know nowadays. But yeah, Wapello over at L&M, Pekin over Waco, Columbus, Hillcrest over Columbus, and then Winfield over Lone Tree. So
I got some other scores I found here. some more up my way scores here. Let's see if I can get them. I know Regina beats Mid Prairie Golden Hawks 63-43. The Keota Eagles, who knocked off Hillcrest, although it was in Keota on Saturday, they get another win here, 69-48 over Iowa Valley, the Iowa Valley Tigers. But Iowa Valley Tigers football team was no joke this year. The Sigourney Savages beat the BGM Bears 69-39. And I think that's only other scores. And those are just the scores. I don't have any other information on that game, but I think we may have come close to getting most of this tonight.
Well, the games that I just real quick want to touch on Saturday down here in the South. I know I talked about, number 4 Notre Dame taking down number 6 Marquette Catholic 85-71, but Central Lee on Saturday in a good rivalry game played at Fort Madison at Central Lee. Central Lee got the win on that one 65-52. So that they won that one. The Danville Bears went and played Durant High School, which I'll be honest, I don't.
Durant Wildcats.
Yep. So Bears got the win in that one, 53-42. And then we already touched on it, but again, New London beat Waco on Saturday, 71-62. Brigham Porter, big game. London Franklin, I think leading scorer in that one with 23. But Brigham just should have turned 18 sooner, Dave. I mean, ever since he turned 18, they haven't lost the game. So, once he turned 18, sky's the limit now. So, but yeah, no, those are the games that I wanted to get in. Yeah, there's been some really good ones here in the area, and that's going to lead now to some really big games on Friday, as some of these teams, like we said, that are in the middle are now fighting to see if they can, get going and maybe keep fighting. But Friday for the Southeast Super Conference, we got New London at Notre Dame, Danville at Central Lee, Mediapolis at Van Buren, Holy Trinity at West Burlington. So if I had a game that I'd want to watch, Holy Trinity at West Burlington, going to be a huge game. Obviously, Mediapolis has to go down to Van Buren. Doesn't sound like much, but and Meepo's coming off a loss, but man, Meepo all the way down to Keokuk, that's a drive. So, that's by far their longest drive of the year, probably hour and a half, which way you go. So that'll be a long trip. They're gonna have to leave early. So, but yeah, it depends on who's healthy for Van Buren. You just don't know.
Well, we've got Thursday. I'm going to be Pekin is taking on Fairfield in Fairfield, and we're calling that the Jefferson County Championship. I've always wanted to do a Henry County Championship because Mount Pleasant and New London and Winfield, Mount Union, and Waco, that would be an exciting tournament there. But Jefferson County just has the 2 teams, so we'll take what we can get, and we'll see if we can't get a Jefferson County Championship. Should be a great game on Round Guy Radio. We'll have the JV game for you starting at 4:45, and then whenever they got to coach cancer night, so it'll probably be a later start. Fairfield's always starts late with the varsity, but I can get home pretty quick from Fairfield. So even if they do start late.
Speaking of Fairfield, Friday night, Fort Madison is at Fairfield.
Oh, that should be a good one.
Washington is at Keokuk, and Burlington is at Mount Pleasant. So those are the 3 games for the Southeast Conference.
And I don't even know if Fairfield played tonight. I think Mount Pleasant and Burlington had byes tonight, or at least off.
Yes, they did. Yeah, they did. So those teams did not play. They played on Monday. A lot of the Southeast teams will play Monday nights and then Friday nights, and so that allows them to have some Tuesday nights if they want to do some non-conference games, but sometimes they don't because everybody in the Southeast Super Conference goes Tuesday, Friday. So, but yeah, no, it was a great night of basketball. Some huge wins for some of these teams, and some some tough losses that will kind of shake up where teams are still trying to fall into place going into that conference tournaments or pairings, which will be coming out here in the next month.
Yeah, we're getting. I think we're at the halfway point, aren't we?
Yeah, we're teams are now playing everybody a second time, at least in the Super Conference. So we're through the halfway point for the Super Conference for sure. For the Southeast Conference, with having a few less teams, yes, they've all played each other once, and so it's all starting to shake out. Keokuk and Notre Dame, at least down here in the South, and Hillcrest in the North. All three of those teams are starting to really put themselves in a position that they feel comfortable. But with that being said, you don't want to be too comfortable, because when you got that big bullseye on your back, that's when the losses can come. So, it's going to be, it's important at this point to stay healthy. It's important, follow the game plans, to watch film, to try to get better mentally, and all those things. If you have a bad night, you need to reset and reboot your mental computer very quickly, because you can't let one loss turn into three losses, or back-to-back losses. And most of these teams are they're doing that. These teams are all well coached, and their kids are just battling. And that's what I love about high school basketball here in Southeast Iowa. Is all these teams can win on any given night. These coaches are battling their butts off, and it's been really fun to watch this year.
Well, Saturday and Monday and Tuesday, those were some big games. We talk about some big upsets, some big swings, in the districts. Pekin gets a big win tonight. West Burlington gets a big win tonight. Holy Trinity gets a big win tonight. It's just a lot of, and Keokuk and Sigourney get conference wins. New London really turns their season around in 2 games back to back. Wow, I'm about out of breath.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the one thing. I'll say one more thing before I let it go here tonight. I was, standing over there by the Columbus kids, and they were all standing there waiting for the game to start. And I was talking to the coach a second, and I was going to go get set up. And as I turned around, those kids were yelling, "Hey, we want you to know we love Round Guy Radio." And I mean, my heart just melted. You know what I mean? It's nice to hear. And then there were so many nice people, and all the Hillcrest people really like me. And by the time I sat down to start the game, it added 5 Facebook followers, and the word was getting out that we were there, and we're doing everything we can, and we're giving all the games we can, and giving the best scores we can, and giving you all the coaches interviews we can. And I break my back every day of the week to try to make this podcast better and give you guys some more information. And Coach Van Fleet, you have been a terrific addition, and you give us analysis that just puts us over the top. Thanks a lot for being with us. If there's anything else you want to say or put out tonight, go ahead. I don't have anything else for anybody.
Just that I'm going to bed, man.
Well,
It's late. We got work tomorrow.
All right, we'll just call it good, and we'll get you guys tomorrow with something else.